This week on Case Studies with Biz Doc, it's Resy, the competitor to OpenTable that's got momentum and is really closing in on the first place giant who's already on the stock market. But there's a lot to the story. I've got the venture funding, the early growth, how they bought a couple competitors and where they are today. All of it this week. Resy. Many of you already have it on your phone. I have it. I use it all the time. It's connected to my American Express Platinum account, and I have all kinds of benefits that I get through it, and I really love it. Resy was co-founded back in 2014 by this guy, Ben Leventhal, who actually long ago had been the co-founder of Eater.com. He was joined by Michael Montero, who I think was a co-founder and CTO of CrowdTwist. Yep. And also there was a little bit of investment as well from a social media guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. Well, Ben Leventhal, back there in 2014 with that experience from Eater.com, was interested in the restaurant reservation and hospitality space, and along comes Resy. They started it in 2014 with about $2 million of seed. Now, as I've done on the last couple case studies, $2 million is not seed for you and me. For you and me, $2 million is Series A or Series B. Normally, a seed financing with friends and family and stuff usually comes to be about $100,000, or you take 10 out of your pocket and you find about 6 other people, and before you know it, you got about $100,000 there, and that's usually the way it's done. And you usually get together with what's called a safe note, which is how the initial round is financed. Instead, these guys, the seed is $2 million. So basically, whether it was from Eater.com or other things they did, they had money in their pocket. So let's just call this a founder-funded business, because to call it a seed really isn't the spirit of seed. And I think it's important as we go through case studies to kind of see the difference in this stuff of what a seed would be for you and me if you have a t-shirt company in Berlin or a small technology company in Dallas, Texas, versus when big guys that have already done some things are now on their second or third company, and that's the case here. So Ben and the gang get together the $2 million in seed in 2014, and they start building the application. Now let's stay on the venture funding for a minute, because this was an open and shut case, and you'll see what I mean by that. So about 3 years later, they raised the Series A, and Series A involved Airbnb, Union Ventures, and this is serious dollars, $43 million there, a true Series A, bringing their total venture to $45 million. That would be all the venture funding they raise, because they, with that money, would do these things and then get acquired. So let's take a look at what they did. So first of all, they're servicing big restaurants in big cities such as New York, LA, San Francisco, London. And if in any of those cities, there's some really phenomenal restaurants. Maybe not as much in LA, but certainly New York, San Francisco, and London have phenomenal restaurants. LA does too. It's just not known for its restaurants the way New York and San Francisco are. So I'm not dissing LA. I grew up there. I lived there. There are some good eateries there, but nothing compared to New York and San Francisco. So with all that going on, they have now have a competition with OpenTable. And here they are, as a fast follower. And I think that's one of the lessons of this case is they apparently saw a little wedge that was there in the market that they could get in and pry their way into and get a space for themselves. And obviously they did. Along the way, they found some competitor companies that were trying to do the same thing, and so they got some strength and momentum from them. And there's the Pac-Man. Do you know what Pac-Man means? Bite, 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 bite. Means that they swallowed something else. October of 2017, about the time they're raising this money, they bought Servy. Now, Servy provided mystery shopping and feedback to restaurants. So now you could see how you take the mystery shopping and the feedback and you put it into a reservation system. Now that's a more powerful company with more software services it can offer to high-end restaurants to say, hey, would you like mystery shopping? Would you like feedback systems? We can put the whole thing together in a relationship with Resy. Then they bought a competitor that was also working on reservations called, imaginatively named, Reserve. And in 2018, they bought Reserve. So you can see with the momentum that they got with those early big cities and stuff, and then making some acquisitions, they're off and running. Then something big happens. In 2019, 18 to 19, they make an announcement that they're going to allow the restaurants to actually list on Airbnb. And Airbnb, being an investor, there's a very interesting tie in there. So now they've got an exposure point through Airbnb for Resy. See the momentum building, take away a competitor, add some services. This gives you speed to market, by the way. They already had a great app. They already had great people. They already had Ben, who had been with Eater.com and understood all this. And so they buy this, and the momentum is growing for Resy. So much so that Amex acquires them in 2019. I couldn't see terms of the deal announced, but at that time, they also announced that they had 2.6 million diners per week. Now, that wasn't reservations per week. They said diners per week. So I assume that if you do an average of 3, that means they were running something around 800, 900,000 reservations per week. That's just my interpretation of the number based on what I saw here, because I saw this in the press as diners per week and reservations per week. If it's reservations, that's fantastic. If it's diners, it's probably about 800, 900,000 reservations per week. Anyway, either way, it is a sign that they're really doing great, because that's an awful lot. I mean, that would be 100,000 reservations per day minimum. Now, the average doesn't run that way because there's a lot of restaurants closed on Mondays, and you know the weekend is going to be huge, but still on a straight line average, that means that they had really acquired the scale and momentum to demonstrate that they were for real and they're going to stick around, so much so that Amex buys them. So what happens then? Well, Amex adds them to a thing and creates basically global dining access. I remember when I first got the notification as a Platinum card holder that you had access to this. I downloaded Resy. I already was using Resy, but when I added my Amex Platinum card as a payment method inside Resy, suddenly I had global dining access. And that's only happened over the last couple years, and I was already a Resy user. So here you have a really interesting thing where now all these services that Amex is providing to cardholders is being enhanced by global dining access powered by Resy, which is now owned by American Express. Now, what I think is really interesting here, and people say, well, maybe they just didn't make it and then they got bought by Amex. I'm not really buying that. Maybe they weren't profitable yet, but I don't think that's really the case, and I'll tell you why. Right now, they claim to be in 4,000 restaurants with concentration in the big cities, but representing over 200 cities. And when I go into Resy now, I find a great library of cities where this is available. When I looked at the results in May, this really blew my mind. They are, and OpenTable, both made announcements that show that their reservations are at, as of May 2021, and we're filming this right at the end of second quarter 2021, as certain parts of life are getting back together after the COVID year of 2020. And it appears that what's going on, OpenTable announced they had gotten up to 9.5 million visits. I believe that's a monthly basis to their to the individual site, and these were web sniffers and analytics companies that made these announcements, and there was 2.6 million visits for Resy, which means that OpenTable is 3.5 times bigger than Resy, but Resy doesn't have near the footprint of OpenTable, which says to me that Resy is probably growing at a much greater rate right now than OpenTable. And yes, OpenTable's public and they've been around forever, but these guys are not merely a small startup, they are a fast follower. And think about this. It was also announced that this was up 2,015% recovery from the low point during COVID, whereas OpenTable said they were up 568%. So this shows you that people, primarily in America, are back to eating and back to dining. But Resy was up 2,015%. There's only one word for that, and that is damn! That is a huge recovery. Take a look at what they've accomplished, and while OpenTable is up 2, Resy is closing fast. Well, I love the app. This is not a commercial for Resy. They don't pay for this. These case studies are done because I pick them and I do them. But I tell you, it is a new product that I love using. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to more and more cities, including more depth of coverage here in Dallas. Hint, hint, please, please, send me a note, let me know. And as they expand even further. So this is a great example of coming out quick with more than just seed money. These are serial entrepreneurs that do it again. So what are the lessons here for you and me? Well, I think the first lesson is you can slay number one. You don't have to accept the fact that number one is there to stay. And in something like what OpenTable's done, as you can see, there's room for a competitor to make a niche. In this case, high-end restaurants in certain cities, like Knife here in Dallas. I know Knife is in there. I'd love to see more. If you haven't been to any steakhouse in Dallas, go down to Highland and go to Knife. Again, they don't pay for this. I'm just telling you out of the goodness of my heart. Fantastic restaurant. I made the reservation through Resy for my wife's birthday, and just a phenomenal, phenomenal combination. You can make those discoveries for your dining and your special events and your date nights as well. So you can go out and you can slay number one. Then the next one is when you follow, sometimes you can refine. It doesn't have to be me too. You can follow and refine. They have refined, as I've explained, the reservation experience. And lastly, look for angles. The angle they found here, they had Airbnb. They were trying to work with partners from the beginning and then ultimately finding a big partner in Amex that doesn't become a partner, it becomes the acquirer. So I think this is a great case study with a lot of sub-lessons for you and me, because they didn't grow and become a unicorn and a $3 billion company, but they grew very successfully, attracted great investment from highly qualified people like Union, and that makes it a really compelling, interesting story with all the things that they did, finding a good partner. And even though this is a fast open and shut case over 4 years, 5 years between when you founded it to when you got acquired, this, I think, is a great case study with a lot of lessons for you and me. Well, that's what I think about Resy. Are you hungry for more? Leave a comment. I answer as many as I can. And while you're there, please subscribe to Valuetainment, the best channel on the internet for entrepreneurial content, and hit the bell so you get notifications when there's new case studies. And if you like this one, check out this one from the Biz Doc archive. Until next time, I'm Ellsworth with the Biz Doc, and I hope I left you better than I found you.